Well, hello. Lots of time just went past, and now it is another video. Yeah, and another stream, of course. I wouldn't lie to you. Why does it say warrior there still? No reason. It's not warrior. No, it's home. It's definitely home. Don't you worry about that at all. In fact, it didn't say warrior there, did it? Ah, that's not the one we want. No, what am I doing? Not that one. Not even that one. Come on now, musical. That's the one. Ah, why is that the score for warrior? Yeah, well, good question. Let's get rid of that. Certainly don't want that. We certainly want home. Quick. It's gonna seem seamless. Seamless. Wow, why do you take so long? Musical has been just seemingly getting worse and worse, and I really actually do miss Sibelius now, which I thought was never going to happen. There we go. Hey, warrior? What? I never heard of her. Home, that's what we're talking about. Home. Absolutely always home. Wow, this is an interesting one. A minor, C major, D minor. Now, this is a curious one, and we'll talk about it more. Really, I mean, I should probably put A aeolian and C ionian, because those ones do have a specifically modal feel. They don't have any sharpenings, but we do actually have a legitimate D minor that occurs at a certain point in this piece. So that's interesting. And what do I mean by that? I mean that the D minor scale that we get at a certain point doesn't have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but a sharpened 7. That C that we would normally get in an aeolian mode, or a minor, natural minor as it's sometimes called, we instead get a sharpened one, a C sharp. So that gives us that harmonic minor feel that exists very specifically in minor. Cool. Let's have a listen then. Lost in the moment again. So I've notated this pretty straightforward, but there is a bit of a wobble. Moment again. Okay, so we get those from time to time when we're looking at Aurora's music, and sometimes I bother putting them in and sometimes I don't. They're just extra colour, aren't they? Clearly those extra notes are not very important, and they arguably disrupt the contour here, which is predominantly a downwards contour, descending melody. Sometimes descending melodies are associated with sadness, but to be honest, most melodies descend at the end, so maybe we should more think about the ones that go up at the end as associated with happiness. Stuck where the road has no end, keeping the sword in our minds. One day life will be kind. So lots of similar things here. The rhythm of each of these four is exactly the same, with the last one being the only one that is arguably slightly different, because we get one day life rather than one day life. So we don't get two notes for day, we get only one, whereas in that part, in all the others, we've got da 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 or da da da. The first one and the last one are almost exactly the same, with that one caveat. The second one is really similar, da 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 da, up to there, exactly the same, and then instead of da 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 da, it goes da da, so it ends up. So you get more wavy contour there. Do, 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 do. Well, this one is the standout one, the very different one. It takes us up a lot further, da, 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 and it gives us, yeah, that top C, yeah, and more of a sort of mountain contour. I guess they're all kind of mountain contours in some way, but this one's very much specifically going up and then back down to where we began. Yeah, so they all have similarities, and that one though is particularly different. What's happening in the chords here? Well, they're pretty straightforwardly given with this wop 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 watery synth sound, but it's A minor, C major, F major. Then we get that again. Then we get it again, now with extra bass. Not on this though. And then the last time, A minor, but not C major, G major, and F. Okay, so it's a really subtle difference. Almost makes no difference. If we compare our first melody and first chords with you can hear the difference, but because it's that one chord, it's a short one, it's not as long as that second chord, and it's still a major chord, it really doesn't feel like a huge departure just by changing that chord. It's a really curious and subtle change, and I guess if you're going to get the same melody twice, one way in which you could make sure that that's interesting is you could make sure that there's a different chord sequence underneath. So that's fun. It's interesting that we keep it the same 3 times and then change it that last time as well. How does the melody fit over these chords? Chord note. Not, but it's the 7th, so we're okay with it. Da, da, da. Not a chord note. Chord note. Do, do. Passing down into a chord note. That's fine. Do, 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 do. Works exactly the same as before. Da, da, da. Not a chord note, but that's the major 7. Quite nice. Da, da. Chord notes. Da. Not, but passing. Da. Chord notes. Da, da, da. Not strictly passing there, but they're following the contour back down, same notes. Da, da, da. Neither of those notes fit with the C, but it doesn't make a massive difference. But da, again, going to that major 7 as if it's finished, doesn't feel finished. And then we do, do, do. Chord note. Do, do. Passing notes. Do. Okay, so lots of that kind of makes sense, and then there are some emphases. Well, really it's this D in these first ones that's emphasized as a non-chord note, as well as these E's ending those middle 2 phrases, which really emphasize, yeah, a non-chord note. But if you think about the melody by itself, it's so well constructed, and we end on our root note A. Okay, we've not got a root chord, but we've got a root note, and then our 5th note of the scale, so our dominant one. Again, the dominant. Again, the tonic, the first note. So we go 1 5 5 1, which is really, I mean, like crystal clear, very straightforward, comfortable composition that makes a lot of sense. So hold on to that while you can, because this next section will require a little more help.
We are not alive, we are surviving.
think this is really good. We don't have any bass notes, we just have 4-part vocal harmony. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So, what is that? What is that? Well, the weirdest note is that first note that comes through in the harmony. Well, our melody note is pretty comfortable. It's our A that we've had as our sort of root chord of the previous sections. We are not alive, we are surviving every time. That by itself, very comfortable. Very comfortable. I guess it's using both B and C, so it's using the second of the minor quite a lot. But you know, that's not so much of an issue. Not that the bad thing is an issue, not that the bad thing is a bad thing. But that note itself is not giving us our unusual feeling here. It's these two. So we've just been in A minor, G, F. F is made up of an F, an A, and a C. Now we only keep the A when we're going into this next chord. The F drops to an E, so that's okay. That's still in our key. But then the C brightens to a C sharp, and the C sharp is not what we would expect. The C sharp is giving us an A major chord. We've just had an A minor chord. This is the first real time this has happened in Aurora's music, is changing from a minor to a major straight away. We've had Inboxes, does have some moments where it's C minor and some moments where it's C major, but they don't change on a dime. It's not that we have a C minor and then we have a C major. Whereas here, we have that A major there, we get a D minor after it, and then we basically get an A minor straight after that, followed by a G major. Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. We get a moment of C major there, but it's not really C major. Anyway, yeah, this A major gives us that feeling of D minor-ishness, but we have that B in there as well. So while we seem to have modulated to D minor would have a B flat in it. So we're not really there. We've just done what is sometimes regarded as a secondary dominant. So you remember how I was talking about the dominant chord in Warrior, ages ago now, and how we end on that dominant chord, but it really feels this pull towards the G, the tonic chord. Well, this is called a secondary dominant because it has this pull very strongly towards a chord other than the tonic. It's a dominant of a different tonic, of a D minor tonic really here, but the D minor itself is something that we would regard as I guess a chord 4 in the A minor that we are mainly based in here. So it's kind of like we have this change of key to the D minor, but because we never fully get the full range of notes we would expect in D minor, and because we don't stay around that for very long, we have more still pull towards the A minor, which we go straight back to, or the aeolian rather, and the G there. But then we do go straight back to that very unusual secondary dominant again. So if you want to think of it as a Roman numeral, that would be the 5 of 4, or you could call it a major 1 if you don't care about secondary dominants. A major 1, and then a minor 4, and then we would have a minor 1 and a major 7. Okay, most of those chords fit totally fine in A minor, but they still, just by the presence of that unusual one, they take on this kind of unusual feeling by themselves. As well as that, they don't have a root note. It's not a big strong A major here. It's an A major with a C sharp in the bass. Okay, the D minor has a D in the bass, but it's not really in the bass. It's very high. It's not If it was something like that, maybe we could make a case for it having a much more sort of grounded D minor feel. But as we don't have that, each of these chords feels kind of odd, kind of floaty in a weird space. I really like it though. And we get basically the same thing the second time, although it's slightly different. And I should comment on that as well. The doo-doo-doo-doo. We had that just before, didn't we? And that made that C major chord for a moment before it goes back to basically an A minor chord. It does a similar kind of thing here, but it does it on that C, sorry, on the A major chord. So we would expect A major, but instead we get something like that to begin with, this sort of C sharp diminished chord. Hard to play, which is really just fun. I think it's a very brash, like clear dissonance to start there. Let's hear it one more time. It's so short, but it nonetheless is there. Right, cool. Yeah, and this feels a little bit different because that A minor, we keep jumping from the only A in the chord, dreams inside of mine, up to that E. And so we sort of leave the A away. So if we cared about it being a C major, well, it wouldn't have the defining note of C major, and it wouldn't have the defining note of A major either. It's got just this dyad, but it does keep jumping back to the A, and as we drop down to the G major chord, we don't get a G. We get the A instead. The A stays on. So all this to say, the way that the four voices come together here leaves us with some, well, quite unusual and, let's say, magical sounding chords that don't have a full explanation or a straightforward center, if you like. Keep changing center and have lots of other ambiguities, which is lovely. We love that when that happens. One of my not favorite things about Aurora, and it might not continue forever, but in this early period, when we get to a certain low note, that line just disappears. So we have this in the top line, and that's totally fine. Big melisma, crazy melisma, pentatonic all the way through, so nowhere near as colourful as the previous section, really, much more straightforward and bright. But we also have that in sixths in the accompaniment. up to this point, because that's a G down there, and Aurora doesn't like going down to an F. Sometimes it happens, but here that voice just disappears there and comes in for some higher notes, when it could have been, it would have just been one F, but it just disappears. It just disappears. Is there any point in that? I don't know. Maybe it gets out of the way of these chords, maybe, and then we get something else. So very similar two phrases there. One really long home, we are home, home. So we repeat we are home, and then we just have home. This is a descending tricolon. We have one really long phrase, we have a shorter phrase, and then we have a very short phrase. Rare, but cool when it comes up. Normally you have ascending tricolons or just tricolons, and this is where you just have three things, like Veni Vidi Vici, for instance, the most classic of tricolons, I would say. And this is working in the same way. It just goes smaller and smaller, and that's kind of cool. When we have the second one, then two voices again, but they are in thirds rather than sixths. When we have sixths, there's quite a wide range that they're taking up, but when they're thirds, they feel much more close together, much more tightly knit. They have really similar resonances, thirds and sixths, but yeah, they feel really different in that respect. Much wider with sixths, much closer with thirds, but very emotional all the same. And there we are getting, well, in the harmony at least, we're getting the 2 and the 3, 2 and the minor 3. Although, are we still in minor here? What are these chords? A minor, G, C major, F major. Well, these are the same chords as the Magic 4. We know how ambiguously major and minor those are. We're going, yeah, chord 1, chord 7, chord 3 major, relative major, chord 4. If we think of this in major, it's chord 6, chord 5, chord 1, chord 4. I don't know, it's hard to say that really that A minor is more home than that one there. Difficult to say. It's sort of ambiguously between the two podes, I would say. But either way, we've got lots more major chords in this bit, or maybe not more. Actually, it is more. And they're all three together as well. We get A minor by itself, G major, C major, F major, nice and strong. Yeah. When we get this phrase again, the second time, we get almost the same stuff, but on the second two phrases, we get a higher harmony as well. So 3 voices. Okay, and again, they're doing this triadic thing that is so common in Aurora's music. Just moving all in exactly the same movement across a chord. They're spelling out an A minor chord and a G major chord, which we might want to think about, because are they over the G major and A minor chords? Yes, they are to begin with. But then we get this long held F at the end, this last time, when it's, and that doesn't feel quite the same. It feels like 2 separate chords fitting over another chord. So that's a little odd just to end with. How it fits in the beginning is pretty comfortable. I mean, it's all pentatonic anyway, but da, 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 da. Those are the chord notes. Ba, 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 da. that's a little odd. We get that added sixth quite a lot, that E there. And then very comfortable. Very comfortable. And then, well, if we think of that as an anticipation, that's comfortable, very comfortable. A little unexpected on that last one there. So we seem to be treating the sixth chord here, the F chord, in a slightly more active, strange way than normal. But is that just because we aren't caring too much about whether these things are matching up? Maybe, maybe. But they match up quite a lot of the time. They just don't seem to match up when we get to that F chord. So difficult to say. All right, back to the verse. Interesting also, you might be able to notice we're getting a longer section here. We don't get a proper repetition, and that's because we have this long chord at the end of the chorus, and in the verse we change that chord sequence in the fourth time. So I've decided not to repeat, even though we could repeat the first two bars, the second two bars, the third two bars, they all feature the same chord sequence. Because the fourth set of two bars is different, that sort of means that it makes sense to stretch it out for a whole 8-bar section, which is not usual. Anyway, endless days of complaints.
Endless days of complaints, forcing the light to our veins, keeping the hope in our minds. One day life will be kind.
Yeah. I mean, very, very similar to the first time, isn't it? With a little more heavy bass and with a very clear wah 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 fives in the accompanying echo, which I think is odd, but that does seem to be what it is. 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5. And you know, I can't fault adding fives in unexpectedly in somewhere. It's actually kind of, you know, the delay presets on most things don't come with a fifth of a beat setup normally, so he must have deliberately done that. Oh well, maybe it was just a lucky happenstance, but a cool effect anyway. And then this is basically the same, but we do have a bass note in it now, this pre-chorus. Let's hear it. And that gives a very different feel to that second half, because the bass note that's given is a note that isn't there. Dong is quite nice because it gives us a root note for that C sharp, sorry, that A major chord, do do, and a root note for the D minor as well. And then this one, now this one, which was A minor before, we get an F in the bass, which suddenly changes it from that A minor feel to an F major 7, and then an E minor 7 as well, as the bass drops for that one too. So that was a G before, now an E minor 7. So just by adding that different bass note, it really recontextualizes those chords quite a lot. And it's a shame we only get them this time. Well, and in a minute or so, but we don't get it twice this time, is my point. So yeah, so those chords suddenly go from being like chord 1 and chord 7 to chord 6, major 7, and chord minor 5. Yeah, really nice. So altogether there, quite a lot of unusual harmony in that pre-chorus section.
We are home, we are home, home.
And then this section is pretty much as we expect it to be. I think it's exactly the same, but in Aurora fashion for this time we have a chorus part 2, or a post-chorus that comes in. Oh yeah, and we have this funky old thing that comes in. It's complicated, and I think how it goes. But it seems a little irregular, and I haven't bothered to follow it all the way through to get exactly everything. But the basic concept of that is that when we get that doo-doo, after that comes a different note sometimes. Doo-doo-doo, sometimes is what we get. And sometimes we get doo-doo-doo, and sometimes we get doo-doo-doo, and sometimes we get doo-doo-doo. So that's the basic concept there, but it's very quick and it doesn't have much effect on the harmony, but it's a nice extra effect going on. Yeah, what about the rest of the stuff that's going on in this bit? So pretty straightforward rhythm there. Da, 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 da. Very straightforward. Harmony is pretty straightforward. Starts exactly how the previous section went, but then, oh, well that's nice. Very similar, but we put the two last chords the other way around, and so we really feel like a release when we get to that C this time, because the F sets up this amen plagal cadence going 4, chord 1, really relaxing change. Yeah, plagal cadence is sometimes called amen cadences, and it's where we go from chord 4 to chord 1. It happens loads, but it's specifically associated with amens in sort of Catholic and Anglican and other kinds of Christian church. Amen, 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 because you have this specific movement. You know, it's used so widely, the chord 4 to chord 1. You know, we could have born in the USA, I was born in the USA, I was born in the USA. Right, so, you know, that song doesn't have an amen feeling to it. But this song is a different case, because this feels very choral, very of the church in a lot of ways. So having that plagal cadence in there maybe is more of an important thing this time. Yeah, the harmony in the voices is pretty much fitting with the chords here, right? Just straightforwardly moving as soon as we get those chords. That one's slightly earlier than the note, but yeah, just a slight anticipation. And then it's just different when we get to the next bit, because we change the order of the chords. So this, that is fine, but then we get the F at the bottom, and we get, gosh, what do we get? We get that, which over a C works totally fine, but over the F feels a little bit odd, but then it finally resolves to the C. So interesting how that works. They just decided, instead of to make something that worked with the F, just to have it as an early anticipation of the C, in keeping with other decisions that Aurora has made for different songs. I see that we've... Oh yeah, that's not coming yet. Never mind, I won't talk about that. And then harmonies. Really, 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 really similar to the end of the chorus. These triads are exactly the same. And the chords underneath are the same. But this melisma is actually not the same. We don't go hum, we just go hum. And then it stays pretty much the same. But they're not but it's different. It's different. It doesn't fit the chord that it ends on, which is interesting. It's that extra D that makes that a sort of F6 chord. A little weird, but a nice change. And also a more appropriate loss of the harmony here, because it starts there in thirds and with a sixth below as well, but they're in octaves with each other, and then they both drop out at the same place. But now with that lower melody, it fits a bit better, and the harmony doesn't come back in austerely towards the end. So I like that one better. And also I don't really like I think that's a little much myself. Yeah, cool though. What comes next?
Come again.
This weird thing. Now this is our rhythm from Lucky and Winterbird. Da da da. Okay, da da da. Pretty straightforward rhythm. And then we have our yeah, kind of threes against twos kind of thing. But this time the threes come later. Normally we're going 3 3 2 3 2. Right, you got the idea. But this is 2 3 3 2 2 2 2 2 2, which feels much more syncopated and weird. Da 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 da. And we don't have anything giving us that beat either, so it really just feels strange. As well as that, we've got this whoop whoop. I don't get that at all. What is that doing here? It's strange. Now here we have D minor as our first chord. Well, let's keep going. Maybe we're just around that 4 chord.
I feel warm again. I'm reborn again. I am warm inside for a little while. I'm fine.
Well, no, this is decidedly different to what we've had before. Nothing wrong with that melody to begin with, although it's using the F quite a lot. And the F is the 6th of our chord, our melody. Sorry, what do we call it? Scale. And so it's one of the more emotional notes most of the time. But that said, it is in the D minor chord. And where have we just come from? We've just come from here, haven't we? So. So a little bit of an unusual change there. And then we get, yeah, this E added to the chord. A little bit odd. I feel joined on the E by the melody there. As we go to a new chord, B flat. Oh, B flat. Well, we had B's before, didn't we? We had B's very specifically. When we thought we were in D minor, we used B's, but now we've had a D minor and then we used a B flat. Well, B flat would suggest that we actually are in D minor. It feels different, doesn't it? It feels darker, slightly more blunt. I melody moves down by the same amount that the chord moves down. Dun, 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 dun. Right? So they're accompanying each other, but then we still get this kind of strange thing on that B flat. That's really odd, having the E in there. That's an added sharp 11 or sharp 4, so that's quite a dissonance. I'm warm inside. Oh yes, no, born again. Yeah, slightly different shape there, where we come down a little further than expected and back up and then down, rather than so really pulling into that dissonance there. I am warm inside. Oh, the heart of flamenco, I always think. Lovely bit of melody there. So that's our minor 4 chord in D minor, but it's a new chord we haven't used before. It's a G minor chord. We had G major before, but now it's G minor. Cool. Warm inside. And that note is really, really lovely. And the way it moves up. Well, those are still, in both of these keys, A minor and D minor, they're still very emotional notes connected in that way. Yeah, and it finally falls to a note that's in the chord as well. But then, yeah, we still get the whoop whoop. The A there sounds really nice. The E all the way up there, not quite as nice as the da -da -da shape, but whatever. Little world, very similar. And then I am fine. Well, we've finally come to our A major, the one that was so odd in the previous one. Now it feels very comfortable, very straightforward and necessary almost. Our major dominant 5 chord, very classically minor, and the melody even falls sort of setting up a diminished chord for a moment there. Oddly dissonant, but it's an anticipation. Great, and then we get this insane melisma. Yeah, let's have a look at that. The chord kind of disappears after a while. This melisma goes on for ages, sliding through the notes of the chord all the way up to that top E, so going all the way over an octave from the C sharp to the E to the A to the C sharp again to the E, and then this classic sort of microcosm of minor here, E, F, very emotional notes. And with the added notes that we get in minor, we get this extra pair of spicy notes, the 1 and the 7. It's almost like we're borrowing the 7 from major, because we could have in major, right? But we get, and that's actually echoed down an octave in the accompaniment, this kind of shaky in the accompaniment as well. Yeah, I mean that's a really cool thing to do. It feels a little indulgent, maybe, like it isn't fully necessary, and this song is already very full of space. So did we need an extra 2 bars of melisma there? I don't know, but it's a kind of cool idea. I'm not going to hate on it. And then we go back to our pre-chorus.
We are not alive, we are surviving every time.
And it feels very like our first time, because we don't have those bass notes giving us the change of harmony there. We get those though. I haven't written that in. Oh no, I have. Yeah. Can we just hear that? Yeah, really aggressively clipping bass there. Yeah, or kick drum or whatever it is. And that takes us not to the chorus as we expect, but to the second part of the chorus, or the post-chorus, which is cool. Yeah, this is an unusual thing to happen. I think it's the only one that does it in Aurora's catalogue, so cool that we suddenly go from the pre-chorus to the post-chorus. Yeah, and this sounds very similar, but we do have this extra line, which is just giving us pretty much the chords we would expect, but actually, so yeah, so it's that E in the A minor, D in the G major, G in the C there, and C in the F. That's totally fine, but then we do switch this round halfway through and we get the G on the F and the C on the C. So very comfortable. They work very closely together, but we do have this strange moment where we have F and G at the same time. Again, the F getting short shrift for things making sense. Yeah, and then this last time, or well, not quite the last time here, we do go to the F early, but we finish on the C, and we have the C being repeated all the way through those chords on the G there as well. So it doesn't fit in the G, does fit in that one, does fit in that one, and does fit in that one, but on the G, that's a little bit of an unusual note to have there, because we normally have a B, not a C in a G chord. Okay, and then we go and do it again. Pretty much exactly the same, I believe. Let's hear it. And then in this last time here, we have just the voices and maybe a super high harmonic or just like a whistle or something. And so because those are unaccompanied this last time, they feel a little more comfortable than when they're sat over that F. That said, when they're sat over the F, it almost feels like they're just doing two separate things and they're not really antagonizing, they're just in separate spaces. However, having it unaccompanied there really makes it clear when we drop out with the two harmony parts and just go to one voice. Yeah, swings and roundabouts. It's an interesting one, this, because I think it has some of the best bits of Aurora's music, but I think it also has some bits that don't make any sense and some bits that are just disappointing. Yeah, I wish I liked more of it more than I do, but I like some of it a whole lot. I really think that pre-chorus especially is just really special, especially with the recontextualization of the harmony of it. It's just great. Okay, well now then, top 10. Where does it deserve to go, do we think? Instrumentation is very sparse, isn't it? I don't think we can put it on instrumentation, and I also don't think we can put it on texture, although I mean it is pretty cool and pretty unusual texturally. but I think there are a few things which are just uncomfortable about it. I don't think that all the textures mesh. I don't like that thing that comes out in the last thing, and I also don't like the aggressive aggressive bass drum that is in that final chorus. So I don't think I'm going to put it on either of those. There is an argument that its texture deserves more than Lucky's texture, but I'm not going to put it on there. Structure, it has an unusual structure. It starts kind of normally, so we have what, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, chorus part 2, and bridge, and all that is pretty standard. And then we jump from the bridge to the pre-chorus, and then we jump over the chorus to the second part of the chorus, which we have twice. So structure-wise, it is interesting, and I think broadly the structure works well. So I think we're going to put it. Yeah, why not? Let's put it above Winterbird. Sorry, Inboxes. Dang, Inboxes has a pretty good structure. Never mind. Must be actually doing really well on structure in general in AURORA songs. Harmony. The harmony is super special. You know, if we think about just all the chords that we used. We used A minor, we used G major, but we also used A major and G minor. So that's already 4 chords for the price of 2. We used F major, we used C major, we used D minor, and we used B flat. So we're actually like on par with Murder Song for the amount of chords used. They're not used as interestingly as in Murder Song. Are they more interesting than the Winterbird harmony? It's not as effective as the Winterbird harmony broadly, but when it hits, it really hits, doesn't it? So let's give it second place for harmony. Oh, bye bye Runaway. Melody, like some of the melody is really not very interesting, and some of it is, I think, overdone, but I think we have to reward the massive melisma and the tricolon, I think. And the good structure of the first half is good. The way it interacts with the harmony in the pre-chorus is really nice. Some parts of the bridge are really nice, so it is doing well in melody, but we have a lot of strong contenders for melody. And could we really put it above Through the Eyes of a Child? I don't think so. And I'm not going to put it above Winterbird either. I will. Yeah, I'll put it above Warrior. I'll put it above Warrior. Rhythm is definitely not something it has going for it. Yeah, I don't think we need to consider it for rhythm. Bum ba da bum ba da bum. Oh, yeah, there's nothing there. Okay, filling in and writing. What colour is Home? I think Home is a sort of yellow, isn't it? Probably. Oh. There we go. It's just 3 categories, but you know, it's done 2 of those pretty impressively. And no shade. you know, you don't need to be good in every single category, do you, Murder Song? Yeah, there we go. All right. Hey, we managed to do 2 today. No, we didn't. What? These are definitely days apart videos. Forget I said anything. Have a lovely day again, and enjoy yourself when you're watching these 2 things completely separately if you weren't there for the stream, which of course you weren't. Like, no one is ever there for the stream. Bye bye. See you soon.